had a request from a follower for a beginner's guide on a chicken coop for 6 to 10 chickens. So let's dive in. First, I want to preface this by saying that it really depends on the size of your birds. There are larger breeds, medium-sized breeds, smaller breeds, and then bantam breeds, including silkies and other really small chickens. For the sake of simplicity, I'll just assume that this is for average medium-sized chickens. So you want to provide between 3 to 5 feet of square footage per bird. So for the sake of simplicity, let's assume that you're getting 6 chickens to start. So you're going to need a coop that's roughly 20 square feet. That's going to provide about 3 1/3 square foot per bird. And all you need to do in order to accomplish that is have a coop that is roughly 4 feet long and 5 feet deep. 4 times 5 is 20. That's the square footage of your coop. You divide that number by 6, which is the number of birds you're putting in your coop, and that gives you 3.33. 3.33 is the number of square feet you're going to have per bird. Now you might think that when it comes to a chicken coop, more is better. That's not necessarily true. If your chickens are staying inside of the coop all of the time, yeah, you want to provide them as much space as possible. But most people who have chickens in their backyard aren't keeping their birds inside the coop all the time. So the advice that I'm going to give here is based upon the assumption that your chickens are not living inside of your coop all the time. They're going to go in there to sleep at night and to lay their eggs, and that's it. And the reason that I say bigger isn't necessarily better when it comes to chicken coop sizes is because in a larger coop, the birds are going to have a harder time generating enough heat to warm the space. So you don't want them to be packed in there so tightly that they don't have enough adequate space to move around, but you do want the coop to be compact enough that their body heat can generate enough heat to keep them warm at night. So now you know how much space you need. Let's talk about design. There are really only 2 things that you need in a coop. You need a place for them to lay eggs. Those are nesting boxes. And you need a place for them to sleep at night, and that's their roost. A general rule for how many nesting boxes you need for your chickens is 1 nesting box for 4 birds. But the reality is that they're probably all going to use 1. So if you have 6 chickens, then 2 nesting boxes is adequate. Chickens are funny animals, and they will all try to cram into the same nesting box. I don't know why, but they just do that. When it comes to the roost, you want to have at least 10 inches of space per bird, which is just under a foot per bird. So if you have 6 chickens, then you need just under 6 feet of roosting bar space. Now, chickens don't absolutely have to roost at night. They can sleep on the floor, but you don't really want your chickens to sleep on the floor because basically they're going to be sleeping in their own droppings. So you do want to provide a place for them to roost at night. But the main reason that I mentioned that they can just sleep on the floor is to describe how to choose a roosting bar. Chickens' feet are a little bit different than some other wild birds' feet. They do grab on to a roosting bar, but their toes don't really curl in the same way that some other birds' toes do. I mean, they can. Their toes do curl around a round bar, but ideally what they prefer is to keep their feet semi-flat, and they sort of just like scrunch down and cover up their feet with their feathers. That's how they keep their feet warm at night. So somewhere between 2 to 4 inches wide is good for a chicken's roosting bar. So let me take you outside and give you a quick overview of my coop. So here's a side view of the coop. You can see I've elevated it off the ground. That's to give them more space to roam around during the day. The construction is very simple. It's just made out of plywood. There's plywood siding and plywood on the top. And then I also have poly on the top. The poly roofing material is super easy to work with. You can cut it with scissors, and it just helps to shed water off and preserve the lifetime of the plywood. One more thing I wanted to mention is that they do need adequate ventilation. And so you'll see that I've drilled 2 holes here at the top. There are 2 more on the other side of the coop. And you need adequate ventilation to allow gases to escape as they sleep at night, or you can have a buildup of ammonia or other gases that will cause problems for the chicken's respiratory system. You don't want the coop to be drafty, so you don't want big holes at the top. You just want holes that are big enough for gases to escape. And I highly recommend putting some hardware cloth and some screening on those holes. And that's to keep both predators out, including snakes, and to keep bees out so that they don't try to make a nest inside your coop. So let's take a look inside the coop. The entire door on the side of my coop swings open. I keep a carabiner on the latch to prevent any smarter animals like raccoons from being able to get in. Raccoons are smart enough to operate a latch, but they generally can't figure out a carabiner, so that's a good hack. All right, so with the carabiner removed, I can go ahead and open it, and it looks like there's somebody in here laying, so I will wait for her to finish and come back later. You need a door to let your chickens in and out. You can use a manual door that slides up and down, very traditional, or you can buy an auto door. I have both. Chickens don't need heat at night as long as your coop is adequately constructed. It needs to be dry, it needs to be draft free, and it needs to be appropriately sized for the number of birds that you have. I don't keep any food or water in the coop with one exception. During the summer, a couple of times throughout the summer, it'll get over 100 degrees for a few days in a row. I do put water in the coop at that point. The rest of the time, no food or water in the coop because they don't use it. They just go in there to sleep and lay their eggs. They don't eat or drink when they do that. Keeping food in there just increases the potential that you could have rodents or other bugs. And keeping water in there, especially during the cold season, can increase the chances of their combs or their wattles developing frost. Having water in the coop increases the moisture level overall, and that's how they develop frost. So for that reason, I don't keep any water in there during the winter, only during the very, very hot days in the summer. And now there's another one laying. What did I tell you? Same nesting box. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the entire side door of my coop swings open, and I did that on purpose to give me plenty of access to be able to clean it out easily. So now with the door open, you can see in the front here, I have 3 nesting boxes. There's 1, 2, 3, and this is completely freestanding. So I can take this whole thing out, which is really helpful for when I'm cleaning. In the back is where the roosting bar is located. That's also freestanding, and I can take it out when it's time to clean. As you can tell, it's time to clean. And that's it, basically. That's the whole thing. It's a very simple design, very simple construction inside. It's just a place for them to sleep and lay eggs.